We are. Alrighty, everybody. We are going to get started with our Frontiers in Science lecture. Okay. For everyone, Evelyn, we're going to start the next talk now. It's those troublesome professors, you know, what are you going to do? All right. Well, first of all, a huge thank you to Dr. Sobel for inviting the panelists and also for inviting our speaker today. So I'd really like to acknowledge her for really making all of this happen. And so welcome to everyone who is here in person. And for those many of you who are at home, welcome to you guys. This is how we've been doing this for a long time now. So I just want to, and also, so in person, so Dr. Williams was supposed to be here in person and he was ready to be here in person. And then his flight was delayed, so he could not be here in person. So he too is at home. So we're having a mixture here and we're very excited that he can speak to us virtually and we can still make this happen. So just as a reminder that we'll have the talk and then there's time for Q&A afterwards. For those who are in the room, you can just raise your hand. For those of you who are at home, you can do like we've been doing for a while now. You'll just type in your questions and we can then read those out for Dr. Williams. So I have done Frontiers, and I've been a part of Frontiers in Science for many years, and I am really excited that this year I get to combine those hats with also being part of the DEI committee and part of helping plan this festival. So with this, we are incredibly lucky to have Dr. Corey Williams. So to start with his credentials, and usually when you're doing an introduction, someone sends you their CV, and holy moly, I was like, okay. So I'm going to touch on some of his many, many accomplishments. So starting off with his degrees, okay, there's a whole gazookas of them. So we're gonna go with his medical degree, which is from Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. And he then did his residency at Yale. And during which time he served on the Departmental Diversity and Inclusion Committee and helped develop a health equity and social justice curriculum. And then of his many other accomplishments and his current positions. So he is an assistant professor in the Department of Psychiatry at Georgetown University Hospital. He is the director of Mental Health Services Innovation for the Early Childhood Innovation Network. He is co-director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Georgetown Department of Psychiatry. So in terms of our topic today, he's somewhat well qualified. And he has so many other positions, including he is a National Medical Fellow, a teaching scholar, and child and adolescent psychiatrist. And really, I am just touching on his many, many positions. He also has awards, and often people on a CV, they list their awards and you say them. I can only pick a few places from which he has gotten them because he has gotten so very many. So one was from the Yale Department of Psychiatry, the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, and the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. And then since we are at an academic institution, he's got a whole bunch of publications. He has a whole bunch of grants. And so for talks, we are really so lucky that he's here to talk with us today, as he has done just about umptillion talks all over the country. So we are really, really pleased to have him. And then also, not only does he have all of these big accomplishments in a certain way, before all of this, he was a public school teacher in Washington, D.C. And so you have all of this academic and intellectual success. But for someone to put that into action and to really have lived that shows a certain kind of character. And to me, that really makes what he has to say so much more valuable in addition to all of his other kinds of successes. So his talk today, why the evolution of science must be harnessed for equity, inclusion, and justice. That really, this is a talk that can open all of our minds and give us a new lens through which to look at science. So Dr. Williams, thank you so much for being here, and we're really looking forward to your talk.
Thank you so much, Maria, for that warm introduction. I'm so humbled and honored at the invitation. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a good volume level to speak at.
I don't know if you heard that. It's a yes.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Again, I'm so excited, and I'm deeply disappointed I couldn't be there in person with you all. I was very much looking forward to meeting everyone and soaking in some of that good Boca Raton sun. But alas, sometimes the airlines don't cooperate with us. But just appreciate Dr. Eziobu, Maria, Zach, and everyone on the planning committee for their flexibility in making this event happen. I want to just first off, thank you all for the work that you do. You know, the education and the work that's done at large public universities. I think it's a major lever in terms of closing gaps in education and opportunities for large swaths of poor and working class folks. So my undergraduate is at University of Maryland. So big public universities like FAU have a big special place in my heart. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Let's see how this goes. Okay, can I get just a confirmation that folks can see the slide?
Looks good.
Wonderful. Okay. So to start off, I have no disclosures. I do want to give folks a heads up. In my presentation today, some of the slides depict some photographs and works of art that show discrimination against African Americans and other folks of color. So if you know, if you need to do some self-care, whatever that means for you, feel free to, whether that means turning your camera off or you know, taking a break. I invite you to do that. I wanted to start off by just inviting you to reflect on this current moment. You know, it seems like we're kind of entering a new phase of the pandemic where people are trying to return to some sense of normalcy. And many of us are taking stock of what things are going to change and what things are going to stay the same, personally and professionally. And no one has gone untouched or unchanged or unscathed. And what does that mean for your career and life moving forward? You know, when I think about how the pandemic impacted me, I go back to March of 2020. I was seeing patients in my child and adolescent psychiatry clinic at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia as a part of a fellowship program. And when the stay-at-home order came down, overnight, my clinic had shut down. I wasn't sure how I was going to see my patients, the patients who I had built relationships with, who I was helping, you know, navigate challenges in their lives, who I had strong connections with. We were transitioning to telehealth, and it was unclear how that was going to happen. And this was all in the backdrop of the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. And we were all sort of reading and hearing about the racial disparities in COVID-19 related infections and mortality. So driven by a sense of righteous indignation for the injustices that I was seeing and reading about, like many of my friends and colleagues, we took to the streets. This was a picture of me at a peaceful Black Lives Matter protests in Philly. And we would soon be tear gassed and brutalized by local police. And while I was attending protests daily in the evenings, during the day, I was attending departmental calls to figure out how we were going to proceed in the pandemic as a department. And within days, we were having difficult conversations about racial injustices that we had never had before. The department was doing the really important work of self-examination and interrogation, wrestling with its role in forms of oppression like structural racism in an unprecedented way. And at the time, I didn't realize that those conversations would be a foreshadowing for what was to happen nationally for the next 2 years, where we've seen monumental shifts in public awareness around issues of racism. And nationally, we've seen scientists, doctors, researchers, healthcare professionals mobilized for civic action in historic numbers. And I think to fully understand and contextualize this moment, I think you have to understand the historical roots and the historical continuities. And thanks to historians like Carolyn Roberts at Yale, Raina Hogarth at University of Illinois, Harriet Washington, Paul Starr, and others, we know that in the early years of the American colonies, early American physicians and scientists were trying to establish a sense of legitimacy and credibility. And at the time, medical treatment by nature was experimental, and the scientific establishment did not have a cogent professional identity. And they were able to find their legitimacy and credibility through finding their roles within the broader system of enslavement. Some of the earliest roles for American physicians and scientists within the broader system of enslavement included things like slave appraisals at auction blocks. Early physicians also worked on slave trading ships and were often the most highest paid positions on the ship below the captain. And through partnering with the planter class and other types of slave owners to keep enslaved peoples alive and productive, physicians and scientists found a consistent supply of patients and experimental subjects, ultimately in service to the profit of the owners. So examining, diagnosing, treating, experimenting upon enslaved populations was an avenue to establish a consistent clinical and scientific practice and establish a legitimate claim to scientific authority. So for example, because of the malnourishment and lack of healthy food, many enslaved peoples who had suffered from pica, which causes people to eat non-edible things like dirt, which we now know to be related to iron deficiency. But at the time, physicians racialized that disorder, calling it Africana cachexia, and characterized it as a behavioral disorder that was rooted in rebelliousness that needed to be tamed and punished. And physicians often recommended labor and violence as treatments. This phenomena that scientific and medical knowledge was and continues to be built on the backs of predominantly folks of African descent is crystallized in the legacy of James Marion Sims, still thought of as the so-called modern, the father of modern gynecology. In the 1840s, he conducted experimental vaginal surgeries on many non-anesthetized and non-consenting enslaved women. And we may never know the names of most of the enslaved women who underwent repeated experimental surgeries and whose organs were displayed without their consent in the name of advancing science. However, we know the names of three of them: Anarcha, Betsy, and Lucy. And as documented by Deirdre Owens in Medical Bondage, Anarcha, Betsy, and Lucy, and 9 other unidentified enslaved women worked at the slave hospital founded by Dr. Sims. And Dr. Sims repeatedly operated on them without anesthesia to perfect his fistula techniques. Anarcha in particular underwent 30 different experimental surgeries in a period of 4 years. And those surgical procedures and technologies like the speculum, which we still use today, went on to benefit predominantly white women at the expense of the pain and suffering of enslaved women. So even in death, the bodies of enslaved Africans served medical and scientific institutions. Through the practices of body snatching, the institution of slavery and inequality after emancipation provided a ready source for cadavers for medical student courses. Competing medical schools in the North throughout the first half of the 19th century, including University of Pennsylvania, the first medical school, used cadaver dissection as a means of attracting more students and advertising themselves as reputable medical institutions. This competition led to the use of slave bodies from the South, which brokers willingly delivered upon. And once the bodies were in the medical school, they had to be dissected soon after, since methods of preservation were not fully developed at the time. This accrued knowledge, prestige, and notoriety from practicing medicine and science on enslaved peoples is perhaps no better exemplified by Samuel Cartwright, who was thought of as a so-called expert in Negro medicine. and arguably one of the most prominent physician scientists in American history. He in particular played a huge role in popularizing false mythologies that Black Americans were inherently biologically different and inherently inferior, as manifested by one of his early technological creations called the spirometer. Pictured here, the spirometer was and is used as a measurement tool to measure lung capacity. And he suggested that there needed to be different machines for Blacks and for whites to correct for inherent racial differences in lung capacity. Further, he recommended forced labor as the treatment for what he saw as the inferior lung capacity for Black Americans. And pulmonologists continue to use racial correction factors in spirometry measurements today. So this history really set the stage for the American scientific community to conceptualize what peoples are suitable for experimentation, who benefits from medical research, who gets the credit for research. And I want to return to this central point, whose interests are the most important. And when I think about the relevance of that history, it reminds me of Baldwin when he says, history is not the past, it is the present. We carry our history with us. We are our history. If we pretend otherwise, we are literally criminals. So I think if we understand Baldwin, he's saying that history is still with us. And the challenge for us is to think about how and in what form that history is still manifesting. This study by Hoffman and colleagues at the University of Virginia in 2016 suggests that racism in medical education makes a significant difference to students and residents' beliefs about race and how they evaluate patients. Here, white identifying medical students and residents were surveyed if they believed a variety of false beliefs about racial differences. For example, the majority of these white identifying medical students and residents stated that they believed that Blacks' nerve endings were less sensitive than whites. They believed that whites had larger brains than Blacks. And they believed that whites have a more efficient respiratory system than Blacks, suggesting that our modern students and residents are still adhering to these antiquated notions of Black biological peculiarity and inferiority, which is rooted in those aforementioned racist works of Samuel Cartwright and J. Marion Sims and others. Then the medical students and residents read in the second part of the study, 2 mock cases about a Black patient and a white patient, and were asked to make pain ratings and medical or medication recommendations for each patient. Participants who endorsed more false beliefs about racial differences rated the Black patient's pain as lower and made less accurate treatment recommendations, suggesting that the false beliefs that they held about biological differences between Blacks and whites did inform their medical judgments. And it's unclear whether these white medical students and residents came in with these beliefs or whether they internalized them through their training. But it certainly is evidence that medical students and residents are learning racist ideas about patients during their training, especially the disregard for the pain and suffering of their Black patients. And this is how Black patients die within our healthcare system and within research. This study of cardiologists drive home this point that racism in medical judgment and treatment decisions can be potentially fatal for Black and brown patients. This study utilized actors who you see here in a computerized survey who acted out a scenario where they complained of chest pain to their clinician. The physicians were asked to watch the video and characterize the type of chest pain that was described by the patient, whether it was a heart attack or not, estimate the probability that the patient was having significant heart disease, and whether or not they would recommend thrombolytic therapy or treatment for a heart attack. And despite the same scripted vignettes, identical pain subjective descriptions, changing the race and the sex of the patient in the vignettes mattered. The authors found that the race and the sex of the patient affected the physician's medical decisions about whether or not to refer the patients for chest pain treatment, even after they adjusted for laboratory data. And the findings were most clear and most striking for the Black women in the study, as they were the least likely group to be recommended for thrombolytic therapy or treatment. Again, this is how Black patients die in our healthcare system and in research studies. Dr. Susan Moore was a heartbreaking recent example of this potentially fatal consequence of this, especially the entrenched disregard for the complaints and pain of Black patients, such as that practiced with in the legacy of J. Marion Sims and Samuel Cartwright, treating their non-consenting enslaved patients. Her case reached national attention. She captured her dying words in a Facebook post. And after her untimely death, a panel of 6 external investigators concluded that the patient suffered from a lack of cultural competence on the part of those treating her. And the CEO also acknowledged in a statement that the hospital system has to do more to address implicit racial bias, weave diversity, equity, inclusion training into staff education. So again, driving home the point that when we talk about EDI-related initiatives in science, healthcare, and research, this is not some academic thing. For many people, this is a life and death kind of scenario. This article from the New England Journal of Medicine entitled "Hidden in Plain Sight" demonstrates that every medical specialty is operating under some false assumption about biological differences in the form of racial corrections within algorithms, where some diagnostic or treatment decision is influenced solely by the racial identity of the patient. Harkening back to this history, these algorithms reinforce false notions of biologically based differences. They fail to account for the actual structural and historical causes of racial differences in health, and maintain racialized differences in the distribution of healthcare resources. For example, one of the metrics that measures kidney health, or eGFR, or glomerular filtration rate, the value is driven higher if the patient's Black, such that a Black patient's kidneys need to be sicker to warrant a dialysis treatment or a transplant. And specifically in a research context, this entrenched racism continues to play out, and not just in the distant past, like the famous Tuskegee experiments, where 400 Black men were allowed to be ravaged by syphilis as the researchers lied to the subjects, explaining that they were receiving treatment for, quote, bad blood. But also in recent memory, such as the lead paint studies conducted at Johns Hopkins Kennedy Krieger Institute, where researchers failed to notify parents of the predominantly Black children's toxic lead levels, and provided incentives for those landlords to avoid lead abatement programs, which would help to decrease the children's levels of lead. And in 2001, the Maryland Court of Appeals compared the study to the Tuskegee syphilis experiment and ruled that the study was unethical and violated the rights of the participants, and their research license was revoked for some time. So again, speaking to the relevance of this history today, this slide speaks to the lack of representative diversity among senior scientists, the structural racism that's embedded within our current system of research grant evaluation and funding, where this paper showed that at each step of the process, such as the decision to discuss or the impact score assignment, we see significant racial disparities in what scientists are awarded or moved along the process. So, going beyond that, potential research participants are deterred from engaging in research, as disproportionately the scientists that conduct research do not represent the community. And this data is mirrored in the physician workforce data, where largely the physician workforce remains predominantly white, and stark underrepresentations of Black, Hispanics, and Indigenous folks and other Native folks. This data speaks to the structural racism embedded in the practice of, not only in the practice of medicine and research, but baked into the hiring practices and the admissions processes within the pipeline. And illustrating that we have continued racial hierarchies that are embedded within our research and clinical workforce. And these continued racial hierarchies within the workforce contributes to the erosion of the community's willingness to engage in research and medical interventions in many BIPOC communities, or Black, Indigenous, and other folks of color. When scientists conducting the research do not represent the community, this is also compounded by the memory of historical atrocities, the knowledge of ongoing racial disparities, and ongoing disempowering encounters with the healthcare system. This has instilled a cultural mistrust of research and science in many BIPOC communities. This recent publication from a community-based initiative in Chicago called "Why Am I Always Being Researched?" It describes the ways in which equitable research requires the dismantling of power dynamics that maintain inequalities between academic researchers and communities. For example, the fact that the community members are under-involved systematically and under-informed about the research methods and strategies is still ongoing. Researchers prioritize extraction of information from communities rather than community ownership of information and community empowerment. Researchers systematically accrue funding, prestige, and publications without similar accrual to participating communities. And researchers' understanding of the questions to be answered lack cultural context. And these are the kinds of things that maintain and preserve structures of racism within a research context. So I want to transition to some of my closing slides here. And I know I've given you a lot, and I want to invite some conversation. I want to share this quote from the poet and storyteller Kyle Maher, that white supremacy is not a shark, it is the water. I love this quote because I think it distills down the core message of this presentation, meaning that the violence of racism and white supremacy is not some rare monster that lurks in the shadows, and not some bad apple at the office or the hospital or the lab, not the occasional near miss or diagnostic error. Rather, white supremacy has been so central to not just science, but all of American social and civic institutions, that it's ubiquitous. It shapes and propels all of our work. It's our autopilot. And if we allow ourselves to operate on autopilot, then we allow white supremacy to be our default mode network, if you will. And I think the water is an apt analogy here, as water demonstrates the sort of ordinary and underestimated threat. The average person is way more afraid of a potential shark attack than they are, say, of a ordinary swimming pool in the backyard. Despite 4,000 fatalities being attributed to swimming pools every year, and maybe 10 fatalities attributed to shark attacks worldwide, we get distracted by trying to find the rare tragedy that is actually the threat is the routine, the automatic, the ordinary norms and practices that represent more of the threat. And it really, it means a lot to me to be able to present a picture of W.E.B. Du Bois and talk about his legacy. You know, he's arguably the greatest public intellectual in American history. He was doing complex examinations of the sociology of health, structural determinants and historical determinants before we even have a language for those kinds of ideas. And he spent nearly his entire life dedicated to education, as he thought that the problem of racism was really a problem of ignorance, and that he could educate people out of their racism. And towards the end of his life, his views evolved, where he began to posit that the problem of racism is not necessarily a problem of ignorance. Rather, it's a problem of self-interest, meaning that people are consciously and unconsciously invested in the status quo because it benefits them. And I think this really gets at the root of the issue. Those early scientists that I talked about and physicians may have been trying to do good work, but they were caught up in the broader ideological project of white supremacy, which they benefited from and their careers greatly benefited from. So we all need to be taking stock, I think, of what systems are we so wrapped up in and benefit from that we can't be critical of them, because ultimately we're invested. So I want to transition to a few just key points to drive home here. The preservation of racism and white supremacy is rooted predominantly in the powerful and the privileged identities acting on self-interest, consciously or unconsciously. I think that racism and white supremacy has been inherited, not in the form of genetic inheritance, but more so in terms of shifting and innovating forms of white supremacy throughout history. And that is entrenched in all facets of the sciences, including education, research, and clinical medicine. And thus, anti-racist and EDI-related efforts need to be proactive and embedded into the fabric of the college or of the department. And I'm really inspired by the work that you're all doing here. And it warms my heart to hear that y'all are doing some great work on the EDI committee. And I want to talk about what does that mean to embed EDI in the fabric. So when you step back and consider an entity like a college of science or an academic department, you could roughly break down the activities within that entity as falling, I think, into one of four domains, depending on the nature, goals, and activities of that work. You have research, you have a workforce, meaning that we all are employees of some sort and are regulated by certain employment laws and regulations. We have teaching and education going on. And then we also are taking care of patients. And even if departments are not taking care of patients, many folks are doing human subjects research and translational science. And while these domains require some separate and specific considerations and activities to produce change, I think there are some overarching principles that could be integrated. And I want to leave you with a few here to kind of think about and discuss. I think that we need mandated faculty training and development on EDI related topics. I think that if EDI related trainings and learning sessions remain optional, then you select for the same group of already engaged folks, or the choir, so to speak. And I think sometimes it's okay to preach to the choir and sometimes it's okay to have choir rehearsal. But some things have to be mandated from leadership, I think, in order to really motivate that peripheral group of more disengaged faculty and ultimately hold them accountable. I think that we need embedded learning communities. And what I mean by that is that I think every team, whether it be a clinical service, a research lab, a service unit, should be having periodic and protected time to come together as peers around specific learning resource. So it could be a journal club or a book club or a video or a podcast, focusing on ways to advance racial equity in their work. And by structuring it more so as a learning community, you dismantle hierarchies of expertise, so-called expertise, and you allow people to be vulnerable and to give them space to grapple with their own biases and grapple with things that sometimes take courage to talk about. I think we need EDI leaders who have dedicated time and support to work on issues of workplace climate, promotion, recruitment, retention, and other types of issues. I think that in my experience, this has been a systemic barrier to the folks that are doing EDI related work in academia and in universities, where they just feel that there's so much work to be done that it has to be someone's full-time job. It just can't be someone's side project or a university service project. It really needs to be someone who's salaried and supported to do EDI related work in different areas of the department. And I think you also need someone who understands the political culture and the nature of that institution, to know who the people are, how they interact, what the norms are, and sort of understand those institutional politics. I think we need to expand partnerships with community-based organizations. This becomes really relevant when it comes to issues of cultural mistrust, appropriate cultural mistrust. There's incredible work going on. And personally, I work with a research network here in DC where we do community mental health and develop mental health programs. And there is just invaluable work going on in small community programs that is really under-resourced and have built up a lot of trust equity, trust capital, if you will, that we need to be tapping into, not in a misappropriative way, but in the spirit of partnership and community ownership. We need to have robust curriculum reform efforts. Again, in every aspect of what we do, we need to be doing deep dives and interrogations around how we might be reproducing some of this history of racism and racial hierarchies. And I think ultimately we need systems of accountability. I think going back to W.E.B. Du Bois' legacy, I think that he realized something really important, which is education is critical, but we also can't be overly romantic about the transformative nature of education. I think that we can transform people through education, but perhaps maybe there are some folks that aren't interested and are going to be disengaged no matter what. And we ultimately just need to hold them accountable. And that might look different depending on what that means. It might be embedding EDI related metrics into people's performance reviews. It might be embedding EDI related metrics into evaluations for promotion. It might be having more opportunities for faculty's supervisees and mentees to evaluate them and give them formative feedback. It might be taking stock of prescription disparities and prescription practices in clinical departments. So there's a whole host of ways that you can envision institutional accountability. But I think it's really critical here in terms of what are the real levers for change. And I'll close here and invite some discussion and conversation. When I was a medical student, I felt like I was taught that we were supposed to be objective or neutral observers of the world. And it turns out that that's never been true. We can't be overly romantic about what medicine and science is. Science is not neutral or objective good for society. It's a human construct that can be used for all kinds of ends. And scientific discovery has the potential to be liberating or oppressive depending on how it's used. And every scientific endeavor has embedded knowledge, value, and power hierarchies inherently. So rather than trying to be objective or neutral, the scientific establishment should be in solidarity with historically oppressed communities. I think we should be explicit about our civic and social commitments to historically oppressed communities. And we should be acting in genuine partnership with the communities that we wish to serve. And I applaud the National Institutes of Health with the recent announcement of $58 million over the next 5 years for healthcare disparities research. And I think this represents some good pandemic-induced momentum towards change. And I hope that we can sustain this momentum in the sciences. I hope that we can sustain this commitment to racial justice. And I hope you all will do the same in your own work. So with that, just want to thank you so much for your time and attention, and I'll take some questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Williams. I have a lot to digest, which is great. So thanks for bringing that to us. And oh, am I? So I am going. So yeah. So I have some questions. So for people people who are present, and for people who are at home. Oh, and also I was supposed to announce, which I forgot, that there are refreshments at the Sandsun patio after all of this. So for those of you who are here, hooray. Those of you at home, you can think about it. It will taste delicious in your heads. So, okay. So let's start. So it's some from home. What are some, oh wait, we all can see this. Okay. What are some good ways to get more diversity into a department at an entry level, like undergraduate research assistants, for example?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. Thank you so much to whoever posed that question. I think this is a complex topic, and I think the short answer here is a holistic review. And I think this is getting more traction on the undergraduate medical education level. I think we have much more work to do on the graduate medical education level. But holistic review, to me, is really about moving away from and devaluing the structurally racist metrics that we've overvalued historically, such as standardized tests and such as research experience and others, to moving towards actually valuing people's lived experience. And systematically giving people value for their lived experience. And so what that might look like is when you look at someone's application to a program or to a department, you're looking at things like what's their lived experience of being a historically oppressed or marginalized person? What's their lived experience of where they grew up? What's their experience of different abilities and disabilities? What's their experience of sexism, if they've had any? Have they participated in anti-racist and social justice efforts? Have they had experience working on health equity issues? And I think when you systematically place value on those kinds of lived experiences, the data is showing that it helps to diversify cohorts. And things like letters of recommendation have been found to be systematically sexist and racist in terms of how applicants are described. So having a healthy skepticism sometimes to how applicants, especially underrepresented applicants, are described is really important. So doing some faculty trainings around that too. I think it's a positive development that the standardized tests like USMLE tests have gone to pass fail. And then also a lot of student rotations have gone to pass fail as well. And I think, the argument is that, well, this makes it really hard to distinguish between people. And what I would argue is actually, yes, and it holds us accountable for taking a closer look at people's applications for more nuance and more lived experience. So yes, it may take some more work, but it's actually the just and equitable thing to do, and will enhance our ability to be excellent and recruit excellence in our cohorts. So I hope that answered the question, but I would just point the everyone to the holistic review literature for that question.
Great, thank you. How about in the room? We've got some. Does anyone have some questions? Yeah.
Hi, that was a great talk.
Thank
My
you.
question is, I would like to pick your brain about ideas for starting community-based health initiatives with communities that are, you know, historically underrepresented, historically mistreated, and, you know, how do you go into those communities and say, but this time, you know, I'm not going to do that to you. I'm here to help. And so I love all your examples about making it community defined, and I get that, and that's totally cool. But how do you get into the community to begin with? That's kind of the problem, right? Because NIH can say, hey, I want to fund this, but if you can't get into those communities, it's very difficult.
Yeah, I really appreciate the question. Fantastic question. I think this is a salient challenge for doing community-based work. And I see that one of my friends and colleagues is on the call, Dion Kokorapia, who's a co-director of diversity and equity inclusion with me at Georgetown. And she's an expert in this kind of work. So Dion, I'd invite you to chime in if you're available. But I think that the short answer to this question is, I think researchers need to be getting better training in what we call CBPR, or community-based participatory research, which is really kind of a subset of community engaged research. I think that these community-based research approaches are still pretty marginal, and most university-based researchers don't understand them. But I think when we do understand them, then there are actually existing frameworks and literature that give people guidelines for how to approach historically oppressed and marginalized communities. And I think one of these principles is the idea that at the moment of the project's conception and at the moment of grant conceptualization, you need to be involving community partners. And one way to do that we talk about often in my research network is this idea of theories of change. So every intervention has an underpinning theory behind it. And too often, we come in as academic researchers with our theory, our theory and our conceptualization of the project already defined. And again, that embeds continued structures of racism and power hierarchies into the project. So at the moment of idea generation and conceptualization, that's the time to reach out to a community partner and say, hey, I'm interested in doing this project broadly. It's at the ideational stages. It's, we're still trying to figure out what this is about, but we'd love to invite your lived experience and your expertise to this project and partner with us at every step of the way. I think that people who are doing community-based work are, sometimes frustrated by their being under-resourced and under-involved. So in my experience, and I work with a network of Head Start centers that serve predominantly Black and Brown folks here in DC, they welcome, the leaders in those organizations welcome partnership with researchers, as long as the research, again, is to the benefit of their families, that it's in solidarity with their families and caregivers, and that they're involved in every step of the way. So I think that people are willing to partner with us if we're coming in with the right attitudes and perspectives and have the right community engaged frameworks. And I see Dion, you hopped on as a panelist. Did you want to say a couple comments on that? Okay, she might be unavailable, but feel free to chime in if you have a moment. But I hope that answers that. Oh, and I see Matt, you're on the call as well. Feel free to jump in here. Matt's also a leader in the research network with me, who I work with, and I'm sure would have some insights on that if you're prepared to speak, Matt.
If you wanted to.
And Matt?
Deal.
I'm sorry if I'm putting folks on the spot here, but I see there's some experts on the call here, so I want to hear what they have to say too.
Thanks, Corey. This is Matt. I think I'm unmuted now.
Yep.
Appreciate the invitation. I would just underscore what you've just been saying, which is that our experience is that there's enormous interest on the part of our community partners in joining in the scientific process with us, and it's really incumbent upon us to extend that invitation and to enter into genuine partnership with communities, and then I think we found that really enriches the work. So I think that you've laid out that process, I think, really well. Thank you.
Hi, this is Dion Kokorapia. Can everyone hear me?
Hey, Dion, we can hear you.
Hi, Corey. Thank you so much for that excellent keynote address. It was wonderful. And I'll just add, I think you hit everything perfectly, and you and Matt, and I'll just add that the initial premise should always be nothing for us without us. So if you walk into a research collaboration with that mindset, I think that it'll set the stage for how research collaborations and community-based collaborations should begin. But it has to be an authentic collaboration. Community members know when we go into communities and we're interested in partnering and it's not authentic. It's just to collect data or to add something else to our CVs. So we have to be willing to invest the time necessary to build authentic collaborations that are actually going to transform communities and transform lives. And if you're not willing to do that, then building community partnerships is likely not something that you should be engaging in, because you could actually do more harm than good. So nothing for us without us. And this has to start even before you conceptualize a research idea. You should be engaging with the community and trying to learn what are the issues in the community that need to be addressed. And then you should partner with the communities to figure out a way to collaboratively address those issues. So you shouldn't really go into a community with an idea in mind of something that you want to do that's already conceptualized, because that may not necessarily be the idea or the issue that the community is interested in working on. And your methods of examining that issue may not even be appropriate for that particular community. So I'll just end here and say that, if you keep that premise in mind, nothing for us without us, that's a great way to start a collaboration with particular communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Beautifully said, Dion. We have a little bit of an impromptu Georgetown panel here. So thank you, Matt and Dion, for joining us. I hope that we can keep the conversation going too after this and collaborate on another event. Perhaps we can organize something in person again. And so I'll look forward to those conversations.
Thank you so much, all of the Georgetown people. And I think we have, yes, and we have another question from our illustrious tutor.
Thank you very much, Corey. That was fantastic. Will you be willing to consider that some people are sincerely wrong? And if so, what would be your remedy? If people are sincerely wrong, vast majority of people who deal with others, whether on the grounds of race, of disability, of ethnicity, gender, is it possible that people are sincerely wrong, deeply sincerely wrong?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. Thank you so much. I mean, I think this is a really, I think this is a timely, generational kind of a question that I'm not sure I can do justice to it here. But in my view, I'm certainly open to that possibility. I think, in fact, we talk about the importance of engaging people in conversation, even with people that don't agree with us. And I think that that's important and admirable. I do think that there are some things where we just are going to have irreconcilable views, especially when it comes to the equal rights and humanity of Black folks, brown folks, Indigenous folks, LGBTQ plus folks and other marginalized folks, where, if we don't agree on the equal value and the equal rights of all people, of all marginalized folks especially, then I'm not sure that we have a starting place to have conversation. And I believe those people who don't believe in the equal value of all people to be, I believe them to be wrong. And I think that goes back to what I was saying about accountability, that ultimately what we might have to do is organize and vote people out, organize and hold people accountable, call people out, organize to raise funds to develop and cultivate our own leaders. So I do think that there are people who are wrong and are dug in to their wrongness. So for me, it begs the question, not whether or not people are wrong, but whether or not, but how to hold them accountable such that we can mitigate the harms of that wrongness and put in structures and supports such that we can start to, build a culture of justice and equity, despite certain swaths of the population being wrong.
Great, thank you. Thank you for the question and thank you for the answer. And although there are some more questions here and perhaps in the room as well, just in the interest of time, we are going to close this portion. And so Dr. Williams, first we just want to thank you so much again for taking the time to talk with us and answering the questions, and for everyone here. We're all I hope you could hear the applause, and I'm sure there's all sorts of little clappy hands going up for people who are watching from home. And we hope you can stay on just a few more minutes, just because we have something that is really fundamental to creating this whole festival and part of how we got to invite you. So first of all, I just really want to thank Yan Mei for being the director of the whole DEI committee and working so hard to wrangle all of us in these topics, which is a huge endeavor. What we're seeing today is just a little piece of what she does. And we particularly, I'm going to bring up the chair of our DEI Festival Committee. So that is Serena Horman. And we're going to bring you up so you can see on screen, and Duto, if you can come up. So she's about to say a few words. She doesn't know this part. And I just want to say that we've all worked really hard. And when you work really hard, then there's your chair who works like extra hard. Yeah. So the creation of this festival and the level of organization and the passion with which Serena has put into it is truly astounding. And it's not just what she does. She has given this her all, and she works so hard, but she also just works with such heart. So truly this whole day in so many ways is dependent on the hard work that Serena did. And so Duto and I want to let her know how much we appreciate her with this little regalitos, and to open later, but just to let you know that we recognize, holy moly, what you have done.
Okay, well, Love Fest. It's a great way to end the day with a Love Fest. My job is to thank my committee, who have in so many ways given up sleep and just devoted themselves to this project. But I also want to recognize all the departments in the College of Science who came out today and set up their exhibits, all of the students and student organizations who participated and gave up their day and gave up their time. Also, particularly Michelle Cavallo, who stepped in. She was voluntold, no, because she's a loving and awesome person. She was helping us to organize our volunteers today. So a special thank you to you, Michelle. You should be standing up here too. And I'm sure I'm forgetting a lot of people. And so please, you are not forgotten, each and every one. Zach, yeah, where is my thank you slide? This is really unfair doing this on the fly. So yes, oh, he's turning red. Oh, we got him. Zach Greathouse is multiple events this month. And so this is just one of them. And yet he has been here for us every minute. And thank you for that and the moral support to do all this. So especially to our speaker, especially to our panelists, and to all of you, I invite those who are here to continue this conversation over food, because that was a personal wish that we have food, because breaking bread together is an important part of being together. Thank you for being here with us present. I'm sorry you're not here with us, Dr. Corey, but we'll break bread another time. All of you out there in virtual places, get with your loved ones and break bread with them. Thank you. We hope to see you again. If you have any final comments for us on feedback on the festival, please use those index cards that are scattered around the room. With that, let's go eat.